Hey everybody, this is Tori Strode or Chibibat Graphics on DeviantArt, and this is going to be a little interesting because I actually already recorded the audio for this, but by some mishap it was lost, so now I'm totally redubbing over everything I just did in the last 20 minutes. So bear with me, it might be off on a little bit apart sometimes. So right here, this is going to be a tutorial on how to compile animation frames using Windows Movie Maker. You're going to need two things in order for this to work. First, whatever you create your frames with, whether it be pencil and paper or in Scanner, or if you have if you're using Krita, which is an open source software, or Paint. You can even animate with Paint. This is how this works. Essentially, you can create the frames with anything, but they have to adhere to three different sizes. You have your 1920/1080, which is your standard HD. You have 854 by 480 and 426 by 240. The latter two, I don't really truly understand what they're for, but those are just what Windows Movie Maker gives you as options. If you're posting for DeviantArt, I would recommend the 854 by 480. If you're posting to YouTube, definitely the 1920 by 1080. So, you set these the size so that when you import into Movie Maker, it will fit within the final rendered video. The second thing you have to consider before you even start doing anything is the frame rate at which you're going to be animating, because that's going to affect how many frames you draw and how it'll play back on your screen. So Windows Movie Maker doesn't give you an option to just choose FPS, so we actually have to do a little bit of math to understand how long each frame holds at a certain frame per second, or FPS that I keep using. So the formula for this is you're going to take how many frames per second divided by 1,000, which is how many milliseconds within a second, which is how long a frame holds. So if you divide 30 by 1,000, you're going to get 0.03. So each frame would have to hold for 0.03 in order to be at 30 FPS. At 24 FPS, it'll be 0.024. And 12 FPS will be 0.012, which I've shown right here on the screen, just for your convenience. So each frame that you will be saving as an individual image file will have to hold for the duration of one of those, depending on what frame per second you choose. And you have to choose this before you start drawing. It's a trial and error thing to really learn what the difference is, but you can look into different animation that runs on 12, 24, and 30. Typically, Disney feature animation, traditional from back in the day, runs at 24 to 30 frames, depending on the scene. 12 frames per second is typically TV animation. And technically, 12 frames per second is just 24 frames per second on 2, as if you're holding each frame for 2 frames out of the 24. Just a fun little fact to throw in there. So for today's demonstration, I went ahead and took the frames from an animation I did this week, which was just a simple blink of Maddie Scribbles on DeviantArt's character. It was just the character of Scotty. And I took each frame and saved it as an individual image file. Which you can do using Krita just by changing the layers and saving each one as a ping file. And if you're going to use the same background, you can even have that stay on all the time and just save each individual frame as a ping file, JPEG. It doesn't particularly matter. I would suggest one of those two, but I personally prefer ping. So I already went ahead and compiled those in a folder, which you're going to see in a moment. But if you're familiar with layers or programs that use layers, you'll understand what I'm talking about when I say that you can save each frame or each layer as a individual image. You just have to toggle whether the layer is visible or not, and then go to Files, Save As. I also recommend that every frame you save in a numerical order, because it's going to save you so much trouble when you finally go to import it. So now here we are in Movie Maker. I'm going to go and open up the file. You just go to, you go to import photos or videos and pictures rather, sorry about that. And there's the files with each frame in it. And some of these frames hold for a second, but that's each individual one that I drew. So I click the first one, I hold on to Control and click each frame, and then I hit Open. And that'll open them all at the same time, so I don't have to import each one individually. And as I play through, Movie Maker defaults at 7 seconds per each photo. So as it plays through, you can see it's not really animated at this point. So what I have to do is the first frame and the last frame hold for 5 frames. So I have to, and I did this at 30 frames per second, so I have to multiply the 0.03 times 5 in order to get 5 frames, because the 0.03 is 1 frame, and so forth. I believe here I do all the center frames. I really apologize that I have to dub this after the fact, but if you click one of the frames and then hold Control, you can change the duration for multiple frames to save some time. So since all the middle frames were held for 2 frames each, I go ahead and I just hold it for the 0.06, which is the doubling of the 0.03. So each of those frames will now play through at the correct frame rate. So at this point, I believe I'm going to set the end frames for their duration, which was the 0.15. And 0.15 means that the start and end frame held for 5 frames. And that's basically that. And you'll see how that plays out in just a moment. So since my frame rate calculations were correct, when you play through the video, it plays through at 30 frames per second as animation. So for this animation, I only animated the blink going down, and then what I did was I rendered the video and reversed the video footage using After Effects. But chances are, if you just want to dabble, or if this tutorial is interesting you at all, you probably don't have enough money for After Effects or Photoshop, which is just fine, that's how it goes. So what you can do is, right here I wrongfully thought I could import backwards. Apparently it doesn't work because it's a numerical order, it'll always import the first frame. So what I ended up having to do here is just import each frame individually. What you can also do is create an alternate folder in which the last frame is numbered as the first frame, and the first frame is numbered as the last frame, and then just import it like that to save time. Because as you can see here, it imported the wrong way, and for some reason I couldn't get them to move the frames like you're supposed to be able to, so I just went through and re-imported them. But then I just basically have to go through and for each frame I need to set them to the proper time frame rate for the 30 FPS that the animation was originally animated on. So the first and the last frame are going to be 0.15, and my middle frames are going to be 0.06. And once again, if you need any help with the frame rate conversion, it's just your frames per second divided by 1,000, and then you have what 1 frame holds for in milliseconds. So you can see here, I'm just going to go ahead and speed up the footage a little bit so that you can just see how it works in the final result.
So, unfortunately, somehow when I was saving earlier, it didn't save the video footage of me saving. So I'm just going to use the video itself to demonstrate how to properly save. So you just go to File, and if you save the project as, it'll save as a Movie Maker file, and don't move your files, because if you move them, you'll have to re-import them into the timeline. It's a pain in the butt. Only use this if you're going to work on a long-term project. Otherwise, you go to Save Movie, and you go for computer is the 854 by 480 if you're going to be doing the video to flash conversion, which I'll get into in just a minute for DeviantArt. Otherwise, you're going to want to go with the 1080 for YouTube. So you just hit 1080 and go through the steps. It'll bring up it'll bring it up as the MP4. That's what you're going to want to save it as. You give it your title and you click save. Then it'll go through the rendering process. I'm not going to do that now because I'm still working on the video file, but that's essentially where that'll go from there. So if you want to use this technique to post to DeviantArt, you're probably not going to be able to post a video to DeviantArt because you need special permissions to get that done, unfortunately. But you can post a Flash file with absolutely no problem. So if you don't have Adobe Flash, which I'm assuming you probably don't, and honestly Flash is kind of overrated in my opinion because it always crashes on me, but some people like it. That's not the point. Anyway, you can use this free program. It's called Free Video to Flash Converter. It's part of the FREESTUDIO Manager Suite, which is it's actually a really great program, but I have to put a really big warning on it. If you're downloading with Chrome, a lot of times it'll come up as malware, like Google Chrome will say this is malware. It's not, but it's been labeled like that because when you download it and you click the file to install, the first prompt is asking you if you accept the terms of the program you intend to download, like Free Flash or Video to Flash or FREESTUDIO, the whole FREESTUDIO suite. But there's going to be 3 prompts after that are there to trick people who don't know what they're doing. So you'll hit accept the terms on the first prompt, and then when you hit next, it'll say express install or custom install. Always choose custom install, because when you click custom install, there'll be a little checkbox underneath, and it'll try and install third-party software, which is basically how FREESTUDIO makes its money. Is you know, these people pay them money to include their programs with the suite. So all you need to do to avoid that whole problem is always use custom install or advanced install, whatever they word it as. Click that and uncheck the box. Then you press next. And you do that for every single prompt, and they should only prompt you with 3 other programs, but even if they do 3 or 5 or whatever, just make sure you always use the custom install and uncheck those boxes, because you do not need that stuff. Trust me. That's where it gets its bad rep from. But the programs itself are just fine. I've used them for years now, so if you want to make animations for DeviantArt, just go ahead, make your file through Windows Movie Maker as a video file, and then just click over here, add files, select SWF, and then convert, and it should convert, and it'll save to whatever file folder you have here. The only thing to also mention with that is that you're going to want to make sure you save one of the frames as a still image, or, I mean, you probably should already have them saved as a still image. I usually use one of those for the preview image, because you are going to need a preview image in order to post a Flash file. But other than that, it works absolutely just fine. So, alright, I guess that's all. I hope you enjoy, and I hope this is helpful.